everybody, and welcome to the Houston Apartment Association's micro webinar series, Expert Exchange, where we address real questions with expert answers. My name is Morgan Taylor. I am the editor of Abode magazine with the Houston Apartment Association, and I will be moderating the session today. Our host, however, is HAA Vice President at Large Tracy Yoder with Barvin, and today is Wednesday, October 20th. Today we are talking to Theron Patrick with ALN Apartment Data and Izzy Garza with Lowe's Pro Supply for a market report and a supply chain update. Before we get started, I'm going to review some housekeeping items. First, the series is designed to offer quick 30-minute sessions, but we will stay on as long as necessary to answer all of your questions. You may ask your questions in the Zoom chat box. And if you can't stay on for long, you can always find these sessions on our YouTube channel, HAA TV, later today. Once we answer all the questions we came up with, we will get to yours. A quick disclaimer, we are not public health experts nor attorneys. This webinar is provided for general information purposes only and does not constitute legal or professional advice. Please consult with your management company or property owner to address specific issues and to form your own company guidelines. With that, Tracy, take it away.
Thank you so much, Morgan, and hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I know all of you guys are probably very busy and in the midst of budget season. It's that time of year. So first of all, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules doing budgets, but really thought that these topics that we're going to talk about today is perfect timing as you guys are kind of navigating through the 2022 expectations. So, with that, we're very excited to present you a rent trend update and a supply chain update with the experts Theron Patrick with ALN and Izzy Garza with Lowe's Pro Supply. Before we get started, I wanted to do a really quick bio on each. Theron Patrick has been with ALN as a data analyst since 2008. He studied math at Texas A&M. And he was a Texas real estate broker and consultant from 1996 through 2008. Welcome, Theron. We're really excited to have you today.
Glad to be here.
Our second guest speaker today is Izzy Garza. He began his career with Lowe's Pro Supply, formerly known as Maintenance Supply Headquarters, in 2013. For the past 8 years, Izzy served as the National Account Manager for the Houston market, and today he serves as a Senior Manager for a national accounts for all of the West region of the United States, and with a focus on multifamily property management and commercial management. Thank you again, Izzy, for joining us as well. All right, we are gonna get started today. As you guys know, I mean, this pandemic over the last 18 months, almost 2 years now, has really thrown our rents just kind of all over the place. It's been pretty inconsistent. Obviously, in 2020, we saw a big decrease. This year has been kind of a little inconsistent. We've seen some consistent trends really the last quarter, but really going to leave the expert Theron to kind of go through this rent trend update. In addition to that, the supply chain management has really caused some challenges for the management folks as well. So, from shortages in supplies and manufacturing to even some pricing issues. So Izzy will definitely share his expertise with us on that subject. So with that, let's get right into today's session. Theron is here again with us from ALN. So Theron, tell us what's going on in the Houston real estate market.
Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and make you the host so you can show your presentation.
Oh, okay. All right.
There you go.
All right.
Great, we can see it now, Theron.
Okay, all right, great. Let me put in presentation mode here. There we go. Okay. Well, it's going to be a fairly upbeat information today, so I hope you're all prepared for that. So we'll get started. I'm Theron Patrick. I'm a data analyst with ALN Apartment Data. And just to get started, this is Saffron. So in case you get bored, at least you get to see a cute dog today. And then about us, we started in 1991 helping apartment locators. And then from then we've expanded to help investors, suppliers, vendors, everybody. So basically whoever can use the information that we provide. And I'm sure a lot of your guests today have had us call and heard us call the properties. And we don't do sampling. We try to hit each and every property every month and get timely data so that As you can see that even within 1 quarter, things change a lot. So we try to stay up on it fairly quickly. And that's how we do it there. You can read that a little bit later. We do concentrate on managed properties of 50 units or more, but we do list every property. We have Houston is basically divided into 45 submarkets, all the way down from Lake Jackson, all the way up to Montgomery County, Conroe, the Woodlands, and east to Baytown and west to Katy. Just a little quick trend here. This is on the left is the state population changes over the last 10 years since the previous census. You can see that Texas is among the states that have, of course, had a lot more people moving in, Florida, Georgia, and then, of course, the mountain states. On the right is since 2018, and you see that Texas has kind of fallen off a little bit. We see more of the Idaho, Arizona, Nevada, the mountain states are really sort of outpacing the growth in the last 3 years. We still have a lot of people moving here from other states. You can see that California is pretty white there, Illinois, even Louisiana, Mississippi are losing population in the last 3 years. This is the resident population. Again, this is over the last 10 years. You can see that even in the Houston area on the left there, that of course, have a lot of people moving in the last 10 years, but the pace has dropped off in the last 5 years. At the end of 2014, we of course had the energy problems with the price of gas. That may have contributed to it. We also had Harvey in 2017. So even though the population is increasing in the Houston metro area, the pace of the population gains has dropped off as well. And that, of course, also in Texas, as we saw earlier. There was a lot of slides here, so I will be going fairly quickly, and we're going to have a PDF link for you guys later if you want to go ahead and review it, of course. Here's the 5 largest counties in the Houston metro area. This is their population over the last 10 years. We can see also that they're starting about 2015, most of them declined. However, they have actually picked up a little bit in the last year, except for the Galveston County. That's the only one that's dropped, that has pace dropped over the last 29 to 2020. This little bit, again, just showing some migration patterns real quickly. The ones in blue are the ones that moved out of Harris County and towards those counties. And then the ones in red are the ones that had people migrating into Harris County. This is over the last 4 years, 2015 to 2019. And you can see that the counties around Harris, so the suburban counties, have really picked up a lot of the pace. A lot of people moving from Harris County, they're moving elsewhere within the state, but also particularly in the outlying counties surrounding Harris County. In migration source, again, this is people that are moving from into the Harris County. We can see that there's really been not a lot of movement lately in terms of people moving from within Harris County to within Harris County. They're moving out. And then, of course, again, the pace of the growth is still slowing down a little bit, still strong by national standards, but by previous Texas standards, it's a little slower. Okay, and so here we have a little quick snapshot of the Houston renter market, renter income and household income. It's pretty widely distributed among the main income groups, not a huge concentration of very low income, nice distribution there. The median household income in the Houston metro area is $69,000, and then the renter-owned households, that's $44,000. And then you can see on the right-hand side, there's been a lot of talk about affordability. These are the bedrooms the average price of those bedrooms for the income of the $44,000. So what percentage of a monthly income would a person making $44,000 have to spend in order to get the average efficiency, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, or average apartment? So you can see that still, again, relatively nationwide, it's still relatively affordable. The average 2 bedroom still, even over the last 3 years from 2017 to 2019, actually became more affordable within the range of the income of that household income for that year. So still in the low 30s, which by other standards in other markets we've seen is a lot worse. And this is just the distribution. This is also available from we publish an MSA report of the Houston Sugar Land area every quarter for our clients. And so a lot of these census data is pulled directly from that. So we go ahead and combine our data with the census data, and so create a 15-page report. But you can see here that again, the income distribution for the renter versus the owner-occupied housing. And you see that pretty much it remains pretty even, tilted towards the renter-occupied until you get to about the 75,000 range. That's when you start seeing the trickle over to the owner-occupied in terms of buying a house or a condo. And then, of course, as the higher incomes, you see a lot greater distribution on the owner side. Again, just a real quick look at the employment over the last 2 years. So from 2019, you can see here, of course, obviously the COVID 2020 hit right in the first quarter around March of 2020. And you can see then that, of course, the labor participation rate. So the top is the labor pool in the yellow, and then the blue is the people that are actually employed. And so the difference between those two is the unemployment rate. And so you can see again in March, you had a large drop off in terms of the actual people that are being employed or even looking for work. But then it actually sort of rebounded even by July and September of 2020. And in a lot of markets, they're still a lot further behind in terms of getting the people back into the looking for jobs or back into the labor pool itself. And of course being employed. But you can see that Houston actually was pretty resilient in terms of actually getting back on their feet by the end of 2020, at least in terms of general economics. You still have the participation rate since the population has increased. So even though the participation rate has dropped a little bit, but it's definitely keeping pace better than some other metro areas in the country. And just real quickly, just the new supply net absorption, Nashville and Houston and Texas, both very similar stories. Last few years prior to the COVID, basically absorption and new units and basically went hand in hand. So occupancies varied, but maybe not more than a couple percent up and down throughout the year. But we can see here the story in 2021, it's a much different story. We have much more absorption. So even though the unit supply, new supply had a little bit of a hiccup because of COVID, and Izzy could talk more about some of the other stuff, the problems with that. But we can see though that the existing supply is really getting absorbed and eaten up fairly voraciously. And again, it's no different for Houston. I've done a very good job absorbing all the units that have been built prior to now, and then even the units that are coming on the market are getting snatched up fairly quickly. Here's the rent and occupancy over the last 2 years from 2019, beginning of 2019. You can see that even though, again, when COVID hit, we see the occupancies actually started dipping before COVID hit. And that basically had to do with new supply coming on the market, not getting absorbed quickly. And of course, COVID didn't help in the beginning of March. So you see that the yellow line, that's the occupancy line. So you can see that it took a dip really starting from 2019. And then really didn't start recovering until the first quarter of 2021, March of 2021. But then now we see occupancy is really taking off. The same thing with the rents, even though rents took a little bit of a hit, but really not that bad of a hit in first quarter of second quarter of 2020 after COVID became rampant. But pricing wise, they really kind of held on to the rents. So they didn't panic, kept the rents kind of the same. Still have concessions open up a little bit. So the difference between the blue and the orange is the market rent, the street rent, and then the blue is taking account the discounts and concessions. So that's your effective rent. So the difference between those two is the amount of concessions. And so we can see now that we're really pricing wise, they really started having more concessions, but really didn't really lower the market rents per se on 2020. And then really when we get into March of 2021, we start seeing a lot more aggressive pricing in terms of both the market rent being raised quite significantly, and then also the effective rents keeping up with those and the narrowing of concessions. So between the two and the occupancy gains, it's been a really good net rent revenue really since April and May of this year, going all the way through even right now. So we have not seen a drop off yet. We can see here, this is all the MSAs. Again, we cover nationwide. So we track every MSA, and on the left, on the vertical is the occupancy growth over the last year. And on the right is the rent growth. Oh, I'm gonna go ahead and back up a little bit. Over the last year, we see that market rents jumped up 8.7% from this time last year. But effective rents, of course, have gone even more because of that narrowing concessions. Effective rents are up 10.7%. So double-digit growth for effective rents over the last 12 months. And then occupancy has gone up 3.3%. So comparing that to all the other MSAs in the country, which are all the gray dots, we can see that Houston is among the leaders of the pack. So that 10.7% rent growth puts it right up, ahead of about 90% of all the other markets in the country. And same thing with the occupancy growth. It's sort of above the middle of the pack there in terms of that 3.3% occupancy growth. So over the last year, Houston has really been a good performer in terms of recovering through the COVID era. So here we have looking at price classes. We divided the into 4 price classes based on the square footage, the price per square foot of the properties. So it's basically just a price tier. It's not necessarily subjective A, B, C, D, but we can see over the last really a lot of the action, the pricing action has been in the A sphere. And that of course has to do with a lot with the new units coming on being the high-end A units. So we can see then the BCDs have been pretty, again, through the whole COVID time from 2019 through 2020, really only been the last few months that even the Bs and Cs and Ds have gotten a little bit more price aggressive and started raising rents. But we can see that the As, of course, actually, again, from that 2019 period, we're kind of struggling, trying to get the new units leased up and maybe offering some concessions. But then really towards this year, the A's have been much more aggressive in terms of raising the pricing coming in. So over the occupancy. So over the last 12 months, we can see that the A's have actually gone up to 6.4% in average occupancy. The B's 5%, and the C's and D's, which remain pretty full anyway, have actually increased their occupancy by 2.6 and 1.9%. Looking at the pricing for the properties, again, we see pretty flat for the B's, C's, and D's. And then until we really get to this year, but then the A's, of course, sort of jumping in and raising the prices a little bit quicker and sooner. But one thing we do see more of in the Houston market than we do in the other markets is the B's and C's typically aren't this aggressive. So especially the B's, the Houston market's done really well in the B space to really sort of ramp up the rents in 2021. And so we can see that even while effective rents over the last 12 months in the A space has been 12.9%. The B's have raised it even quicker level at 13.8%. And then the C's almost reaching double digits is also uncharacteristic for any normal year. C's typically, and D's would typically be 1 to 4%, maybe 5% raising. So we're seeing a lot of movement even in that space, which we don't normally see in a market or a typical year. So this is the monthly change. So this is month over month. How has the effective rent changed from the previous month? So obviously towards the left-hand side, things are more normal. And again, given month to month, you're raising rents maybe at 0.5% or or whatever. Basically, a 5 to 6% annual rate, so 0.5% per month. But you can see that the A's kind of discounted early on in the COVID time. But then sort of leveled back out again towards the end of 2020. But then now looking at the right-hand side, we see that over the last 5-6 months, we've really seen a lot of aggressive pricing. So not every single product space, the A, B, C, D, have all increased rents almost every month, except for the A's, which had a little retreat in April, but and then also a little bit at the end. But we are seeing a much higher delta, even month to month, month over month. It's just almost a constant raising of prices over the last 5-6 months. And we maybe some seasonality we may have go into the fourth quarter slowing down, but so far we're not really seeing that. We're seeing a little bit of the A's come down a little bit, but B's and C's and the D's are probably settling a little bit, but again, still well above 0% monthly change. So looking at just some of the submarkets here, we see, of course, a lot of the action. I'm sure you guys know on the ground where the new product is going in. But we're seeing a lot of action out in the suburbs, a lot more so than we see in some of the other markets. They've really kind of gone back to the business districts, but Houston being spread out anyway, we do see a lot of action in terms of some of the other markets that we still, of course, obviously have some in the Heights and then the inner loop and stuff, but we definitely see a lot more action in Houston suburbs than we do in some of our other markets. So this is looking at all the properties. This is including lease up, and this is the 45 submarkets in the Houston area. This includes lease up and stabilized properties. The bar represents the effective rent per unit, so the more expensive ones on the left and the less expensive submarkets on the right. And then the dots represent the year-over-year annual change in those rents. So we can see that on the left-hand side, the pricier ones have even been more aggressive with their pricing over the last year. They've really benefited. And it's sort of kept the same general trend line with the value of the properties. And so again, looking at that, the B's and C areas, not quite as aggressive as the A and B space in terms of really being aggressive with their pricing. But again, to see so many dots up there, I mean, we only have one of them that even year over year is under zero. And then everybody else is at least, 2, 4, 6, but even just so many double-digit price increases in those submarkets over the last year. It's really impressive performances. Again, a lot of the suburban ones, Conroe, we have Katy, some of those other areas, Spring, really performing really well. Some of those outlying markets. This is the stabilized, so they're not counting, taking the lease up properties out of the equation, looking at the properties that were already pre-existing, prior to the last 12 months, that were already stabilized, that were out of lease up, they're just maintaining their people. We still have a really good performance. We do have a few more that really didn't raise prices very much, the Inner Loop East and the Lake Jackson, Clute area, but for the most part, we still kind of had the same general trend line. The pricier they were, the little bit more aggressive they were able to be on the pricing. And still a lot of good performance, a lot of properties in the 8 to 10% range, even some up there, 14, 15, 16% year over year, even for pre-existing. So that's not even just bringing in new Class A properties. So that's really good performance for a lot of these submarkets, and it's really broad-based. So it's not all concentrated at once. It's a general trend line based on the wealth of those submarkets, but still a pretty good performance overall in terms of the distribution of the performance. And then looking at the occupancy growth, of course, we looked at a lot of those that built the properties, and so they filled those properties up this year. So the ones that recently came on the market in the last 2 years also filled up, had a greater performance in terms of occupancy gains. And now we see that some of those have, all of them, back in the 80s and even 2019, still in the submarkets that were in the 80 to 85% range, with all those new units coming on. You can see now they've jumped up into the 90, 95, 94% range for these submarkets. So again, really good performance and absorbing all that new product. So it's not really a lot of wasted assets that are sitting around waiting to be filled. So again, very good performance in terms of leasing up your available supply. And then effective rent growth. Again, we can see a lot of those same characters. So the outlying ones that brought in new product and they had a lot of new supply there really raised the rents and the average rents for those properties that are in those areas. So again, really good performance in terms of 2-year annual growth, 2-year growth. And again, distributed, some of them inside the loop, some of them, interior submarkets, but also, again, a lot of the perimeter submarkets doing really good in terms of bringing in nicer and more expensive supply. So doing a really good job of also keeping those occupied. And so again, just a quick recap of where we're going. So in 2022, where it's going to go. So basically, you're doing a pretty good job of not having a lot of stuff come on. Some of it's not by choice because you can't build them as fast as you'd like to, I'm sure. But so far, the variation of the Houston supply that's come in has been pretty consistent with what's been absorbed. What we've just seen, though, of course, is 6 months of absorption that has been unprecedented in terms of, really anything we've seen even since, the 90s. So even though 2021, so 2020, we had about 20,000 units that were entered the market. 2019, about the same. And so 2021, we've got about 15, 16,000, but by the end of the year, that should be right about that 20,000 mark. So again, nice, consistent delivery of supply so far, at least in the last 3 years. Now, that may taper off in 2022, because we do see a lot less stuff in the pipeline that we would normally see of a market the size of Houston. Again, that bodes well for the pre-existing product in terms of maintaining and not have to lose out or a battle with lease concessions for new units. But so far, over the last 3 to 5 years, the Houston market has been pretty good, even with the setbacks of the oil and Harvey and everything, of really kind of not overbuilding and not getting too far behind the pace of absorption. And then so looking ahead for 2022, these are the 4 phases of new construction. If we have pre-construction, we have under construction, and then leasing up while they're still finishing the property, and then of course in lease up. And we can see that basically properties in construction, lease up on the right-hand side for Houston, about 22,000 that are still currently not stabilized, but in some form of lease up, which is good. Again, you've absorbed almost 40,000 units so far this year, and we've done about 35 of that since April of this year. So again, that's unprecedented. Normally, you would be 16 to 25,000, somewhere in that range of absorption. So basically, you've doubled your absorption over the last, pace of absorption in 2021. But you've only got 56,000 units that are even coming on, and they're even going to be built in the next 2 to 3 years. So again, that's really good, especially if you can keep up this pace. I don't think it will necessarily, but you've definitely got a good amount of stuff in the pipeline. In fact, probably this is one of the fewer markets that I would say you probably could even add some more stuff to the pipeline, because you can see that on the Texas side, basically almost 300,000 units somewhere in pre-construction or construction, and then Houston's only accounting for 20% of that. So the size of the market of Houston is representing in Texas should account for probably a little bit more of the new construction, but we're seeing a lot of focus on Austin and San Antonio and Dallas, but Houston really can kind of ramp up production here, but still performing really well. So anyway, that's basically the state of the industry. I think so far everything's good. There are a few things that might change. Home ownership at 2022 might be an issue with people converting to homes finally. But overall, I think the outlook for Houston, you won't see this growth next year. But even if you just go back to the way things were before, or even slightly under, I think you're not set for any kind of rapid drawdown or any kind of rapid thing, especially with the energy sector picking back up a little bit. I think so. I think things look pretty good.
Well, finally, some good news for Houston. I know that we're all due for some. So thank you for that detailed report, and I appreciate you sharing your PowerPoint. I know, personally, I mentioned this earlier. I know a lot of us are working on budgets, and I do think it's very, prudent to mention, you can't always look at Houston and Harris County as a whole, right? You really got to dig into the different submarkets. I know you mentioned 45 different submarkets just in Harris County. That doesn't even mention the other counties that we cover. So great update. Thank you so much. Morgan, did we have any questions for our viewers?
We do not at the moment, but guys, Izzy is about to give a supply chain update, and I know you guys have tons of questions about that. So go ahead and start asking in the chat box below, and after Izzy gives a quick report, we will get to your questions. And Theron, if you wouldn't mind making me the host again.
Okay. Let's see, how do I do that?
You're gonna hit the little 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner of my box.
Okay.
And hit make host.
Okay.
I think you need to stop sharing your screen first, maybe.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
Okay. So, and then, oh, no, more. I see live. I see.
That's okay. I don't think we really need to worry about as long as we're
okay.
I I think Izzy can take it from here. So Izzy, again, thank you so much for joining us and being our expert. I know, like Morgan mentioned, viewers, please, first of all, thanks for staying on, because I know a lot of you probably have some questions for Izzy. So go ahead and start putting that in the chat on your specific questions as it relates to any supply issues that you're seeing. And Izzy, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Tracy. Theron, amazing report, very thorough, for sure. A lot of information to digest there, First of all, I hope everybody is well, everybody is safe, that your families are doing well, especially during this time. I wanted to give a quick rundown of what we're facing at Lowe's Pro Supply, many MRO supplier companies when it comes to the supply chain issue. Please know that we're working very hard to resolve a lot of these disruptions that have happened as you continue to get these units ready for tenants and people that are wanting to rent, especially from all the information that Theron just presented. But you've probably heard a lot of stuff that's going on in the media. You hear cargo ships out in the sea, you hear a lack of transportation, you hear raw materials, you hear manufacturers or warehouses down. And to be honest, a lot of those incidents or issues are causing a supply chain. Things that you would basically need on an everyday basis for your units is become hard to locate. And what I wanted to do is just, give a feedback, or give me just a quick rundown of what we're facing as we wait. A lot of items that are very common are stuck in these ports. They're stuck in these cargo ships. And we're having issues getting it transferred to, our warehouses because of a lack of transportation. Raw materials and warehouses, it depends on what you're looking for. There's always a reason why that particular product may be delayed. I've been asked this, and I wanted to just quickly say that the best way that we can help resolve this, especially during this time, is to work with your supplier partners as we get through this. Companies like LPS have over time, found alternatives to sell that you may typically not use, but say, hey, we've got this alternate issue or product that we can provide. Would this work? If you're using a 2-inch forward blind, can we give you this blind instead? And the other thing is, being part of Lowe's, is that we're able to go ahead and use their warehouses to locate product too as well. I think the biggest thing, like I said, is when you're working with your supplier partner and trying to find alternatives that you come across, that's where I think we can create some magic for you guys. And so I just wanted to open up to each and every one of you that are on the panel, as well as out there in the audience, to give us any questions, and I'll tell you what we're seeing on our end and hopefully get you an answer. And if you need support on site, we're more than happy and we would be very grateful to visit your community as well.
So Izzy, I not to put you on the spot, but I do have a question. So I know that, again, mentioned budgeting, and I think all of us have experienced exactly what you were just speaking of, as far as the different shortages and things of that nature. So, given your expertise and you being just kind of in the thick of it, if you will, any suggestions or recommendations on how we can work around these delays and shortages, especially going into, new budgets and new financials and things of that nature? Any recommendations you can give us?
Yeah, Tracy, what we have found out that, it's funny that today I had a call from one of our management companies, ask the same thing. And pricing right now is very subjective. We don't know what it's going to look like in 6 months or 8 months, and we're doing the best we can to make sure that our pricing is pretty consistent. What I would recommend you doing is, give us a very detailed plan as far as like what you're expecting, what you're wanting to do, and then allowing us to go ahead and help on our end, plan those out on our end, see if we can meet that specific need, especially when it comes to pricing and if things are floating up in the air, up and down and all that. It's definitely a challenge, and it's definitely something that, I've heard experts say that they don't really believe that this will be resolved quickly. We could be well deep into 2022 before we start to see relief. So it's a very, very tough question to answer, Tracy, just simply because of the unknown. Last year, PPE items were scarce, and now PPE items are plentiful now. And now, I kind of look at that and say, wow, it's very crazy that things that are very common are very hard to get a hold of now. What's it going to look like in 6 months? And what we're trying to do on our end is work with our companies that we work with to find answers for you so that we can relay that message for you. So very difficult to answer, especially in this time right now. But what I would suggest is really simple. Tell us exactly what you're needing, the plan, the timeline, and then allow us to give you something back that says we can commit to this, and go from there.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I know I can only speak for, my personal experiences that myself and my team have been going through both on, new construction properties
Right.
and obviously existing properties that are trying to do renovations, is that, planning has never been more important. I mean, trying to, plan ahead and set realistic expectations too. So
if you recall earlier this year, the price of wood escalated big time, and no one saw that coming no one saw that coming. And it was a real big shock to a lot of companies, especially those who are building. So it's very unforeseen, what we expect in 2022. The only thing that we can say is that supplier partners like LPS and everybody in the MRO space are working hard to, hopefully be able to create concrete suggestions that hopefully you can use going into 2022, especially during budget time. It is a challenge, and we'll do the best we can to work with you as you start to navigate and plan for 2022.
well, I definitely appreciate your insight, as well as I'm sure everybody that's listening in, and our partnership with both you guys and all of our supplier partners. So we've made it through the last couple of years, and thank goodness for the great market update report. But we still have some challenges, obviously, in front of us that we've got to navigate through. I do want to check with Morgan to see if there was any additional questions for Izzy regarding the supply chain.
No, I'm really surprised that we don't have any specific questions from our attendees today. Usually this topic grants a lot of really specific questions, but no, I don't have any from our viewers.
Yeah. Well, I am very appreciative, and if there's specific questions that you would like to ask me or Theron offline, feel free to forward our information. I'm more than happy to help out, and hopefully get you the best answer for your planning or what you're going through. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be with some amazing people here. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. We'll be posting this video onto our YouTube channel, and I'll be sharing it on Facebook and LinkedIn. So if you guys are watching this later on either of those platforms, please just ask those questions that you have in the comments below, and I'll get in touch with either Theron or Izzy and get you an answer. But with that, let's go ahead and wrap up the session today.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks,
And Izzy, for joining us. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for your guidance and your expertise, whether you joined us live or watch the session later. We hope you found this session very helpful. And thank you, Tracy, for hosting. A quick note, we are skipping November's session, but we'll be back in December before the new year. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, thank you.